Sin. How does it feel in your body when you hear that word? If you're anything like me, you likely feel immediate shame. Maybe like ick. Doesn't feel good in your body when you tap in and feel into it right now. And I want to talk today about the original use of that word via the Bible and via religions, and its unintended and intended consequences on the populace and humans at large. I'm going to take you back to some of my childhood and experiences as I got older. So I grew up in a religious household, and about like 10, 11 years old, we stopped going to church. And when I was in my older teens, I actually found God again, and that was on my own accord. And when I was 22, I got pregnant with my twins, my first beautiful children. And at the time, I was not married, but I was Christian. And the greatest shame I ever felt in my life was at this time. You know, going to church and being pregnant outside of marriage is such a no-no, within that religion. And, here I felt so close to God prior to that, felt so connected, felt so much love in my heart. And then when this occurred, I felt so much judgment, the greatest judgment, shame, and guilt I've ever felt in my life, directly from many members of that same church. And I think this was one of the turning points in my life where I really started questioning what this was all about, and if it was truly God's word, that what I had done or this beautiful life that was in my body was wrong. And I ended up having my twins, and probably a few years later, when they were about 3, while still very close to God, I kind of started questioning a little bit more, kind of stepped a little bit away from the dogma and the severe, strict aspects of religion, and kind of floated around a little bit until I came into spirituality. I had a mass spiritual awakening, I would call it, around seeing things. I would say I probably dipped into the New Age world a little bit and learned a ton about energy, quantum physics, energy healing, opened my psychic gifts, and brought me into a whole new world that felt so right at the time as well. And probably about 3 years or so ago, 4 years ago, especially started during the COVID times, I've really started questioning again if what I was doing, especially on an intuitive level, was wrong. I had, for years been told by so many religious people that, tapping into my intuition was of the devil. I'm sure any of you who are listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about. I haven't experienced the same things thrown at them. And so, went to question it again and really spend a lot of time asking God if to lead me into further truths, that if where I was or what I was doing was wrong, that would be revealed to me. And I will say that this time period over the last, I'm going to actually go into probably the last 4 to 5 years, really brought me into understanding spiritual discernment. And I'm going to come back to sin and the word, but I'm kind of giving you guys a background of my story and where I've kind of come from. So, let me go back and say, within the spiritual movement, when you first wake up, if any of you have, let's say, you think you have a spiritual awakening and you start dancing in that new age world, you come across a whole lot of, let's say, things that maybe would go, especially if you grew up in religion like me, would feel really uncomfortable. So festivals where, it's all love and super hypersexual expression and body movements and music and loudness and things that just might even feel a little over the top to you. And what I will say around that is, I think what occurs is we go from one extreme to the far other extreme hopefully to then find center. And what I mean by that is, going into these experiences, I found, there's a lot of drugs even in the New Age movement, and, places like Burning Man, people feel like it's so free, and, you've got all this hypersexuality, hyper expression, free to be who you are. And while there's that at its core is not wrong, and I'm going to bring this back to sin, is that I think what we find when we go from one extreme to the other is that without the understanding of who we are in our truest nature, who our soul is outside of the body, we can't understand why we're seeking to express the way we are, why we're doing the things we are, especially because we forget, especially if you come from the New Age movement, that we are manipulated by and have darkness that seeks to use us and feed on us in the spiritual realms. And that is something that when I was seeking God to kind of understand further what I was potentially missing, was the missing piece that I dabbled in and understood to a degree, but really came back into deep understanding in my heart around. Christianity, Catholicism, all the religions would call them things like jinn, demons. And then you go to the New Age movement, which says that is all a thought form. And I'm going to say both are true, right? Terms we use to express something that has gone against love, separate itself from love. So going back into the term sin, and the ick we feel in the body, humans have used this term to control the populace, to control their congregations, to make one feel that they are wrong, their very nature is wrong. And I personally don't believe that's what Yeshua was really trying to teach us. We come down into this earth plane knowing that we're going to come against ourselves, meaning sin. And in psychology, you often hear things like sin, the definition of sin is to go against oneself. I would agree. And in the Greek and Hebrew translations, it's to miss the mark. So I think we need to pull the stigma around that term, look at it from a different angle, and redefine what it's trying to teach us. Which is what? Anything that goes against love, our very nature, which is pure, unconditional love, would be to sin. Which is why you have commandments. What Yeshua is trying to teach us about love and the kingdom of God within ourselves is to lust would be in the flesh, would go against our very nature, which is pure love. Anything that would go outside of yourself, the need externally, would be to sin. So extreme lust, right? Extreme greed. These things which we are pulled all the time by, our society to seek constantly, and the systems that have been set up in order to really hold your hand or pull your hand toward doing these extreme things, these overconsumptions. And that is what I believe Yeshua was truly trying to teach us. And so these congregations and these pastors and these priests who use it in a way to make you feel bad about who you are have missed the mark, and I will die on that hill. We have missed the mark if we believe that our very nature is wrong. It is not. It's the opposite. We have to reframe this. We have to come back into the awareness that we are love. And when we operate out of it, that is going against oneself. It all comes back into coming back into alignment in oneself. To seek the kingdom within ourselves is to sit in reverence. It's to sit in prayer. It's to sit in meditation. It's to find that light within you. Which is why Jesus did, which Yeshua is his real name, did sit in meditation. And in the church they'd call that prayer. both of which are wonderful and beautiful and actually highly necessary. But we're so highly distracted that we can't hear our voice, we can't hear our soul, and we can't hear God. When we come back into stillness and seek that within ourselves, we find our very nature again. And if we find our nature, we understand from a feeling and a pure psychic awareness what sin actually is. Not from a definition, but from a feeling, from a pure awareness. And I think that will be a huge part of navigating, especially the coming years, on what's occurring on this planet and the systems that are getting stirred up and will crumble. It's to bring us back into reflection on who we really are instead of seeking outside of ourselves. And as long as we have large congregations, and I'm not speaking to the pastors that are in true love alignment, it's each person's intentions on how they use something or just reiterate words or teachings without seeking that true knowledge within themselves. Because words at the end of the day are written by humans. Even if God was in connection to that, we are still fallible. We can still mistranslate. We still make mistakes. And culture changes, and so our awareness of words and terms shifts, right? And further, I would say, in the spiritual realms, there are no words. Everything comes from pure thought form. It's just an awareness, an immediate download and an awareness, right? So the English, all languages are fallible. They all miss something. We seek to define something to understand it. But in the upper spiritual realms, these things come naturally with an awareness that's sometimes hard to describe. I know that because number one, seeking it myself in deep meditation, but number two, as an avid studier of near-death experiences, for years and years and years, I have heard well over 1,000. I understand what that is like on the other side per so many people who've crossed over. And knowing that what I just spoke to is a common reoccurring theme, which is there aren't words, there is an understanding, and most people struggle to find any words to explain what they experienced on the other side. So I just want to bring us back into that awareness around sin, to take that fearful energy that has been so attached to it and look at redefining it in a way that reminds us it's just to miss the mark on who we really are. It's to go outside of ourselves to seek a momentary feeling or satisfaction when all of that is inside. And that is what Yeshua was trying to remind us of, teach us. So today I hope, if that brings you any peace in your heart, as it does for me, that would land with you and allow you to release the past, because there's always pure forgiveness coming back into the spiritual realms. We're always forgiven for everything we've done, and it's a hard pill to swallow. I won't get into the specifics about where we could go when we cross over, because it's not all love and light. It is available to us, but that takes our own awareness to know who we really are, and that is the key that they don't want you to know.